It's Monday, the 19th of February, 2024, and this is the GamesIndustry.biz Microcast. I'm James Batchelor, Editor-in-Chief of GamesIndustry.biz, and I am joined, as always, by Chris String, Head of GamesIndustry.biz. How are you this morning?
I'm all right. Yeah, sun is shining. It stopped raining for a moment.
Not
nice.
In the console space, as we will dive into.
No, it's it's pouring in the
It's pouring in the console space. We have got so much to dive into, we're going to go straight into it. I'd like to start, if we can, with the Xbox anticlimax. This is something we've talked about on the site a lot. We've talked about on the recent Microcast and so forth. But on the off chance that you're only now becoming aware of this, I feel like I need to frame this properly. Rumours were spreading that Microsoft was going to put key first-party titles like Indiana Jones and Starfield onto rival platforms, including PlayStation 5. Rumours were spreading that Microsoft had closed its publishing division that was going to handle boxed and physical products. It was going to go digital only. Rumours were circulating that Microsoft was going to drop the Xbox console and just become a third-party publisher. Rumours were circulating that Game Pass was going to be renamed Microsoft Game Pass and Microsoft was going to drop the entire Xbox brand. The rumours were getting out of hand.
I think rumours and speculation are getting mixed up in this.
Yes.
It's, I'm pretty sure some of those suggestions on social media were more people getting ahead of themselves.
This is the thing. So a lot of this was like, it all just kind of escalated, like from basic rumours and reports and people familiar with this, say, to full-blown speculation, as you say. It escalated to the point where Xbox kind of responded, or at least accelerated their response. They released a podcast last week, which, as we discussed on a previous Microcast, was going to be a business update for their vision of the future of Xbox. And they start at the podcast, they say they've been planning on doing this since I think kind of December, shortly after or not too long after the Activision Blizzard acquisition was completed. And they were going to talk about the future of Xbox, what this all means going forward. They're responding to the rumours, and the big news is 4 smaller and or older games are coming to other consoles. 2 are other platforms. 2 are community driven, believed to be Sea of Thieves and Grounded. 2 are smaller titles that weren't. I think the exact phrasing they used was like weren't designed as platform exclusives. The common consensus tends to be that this is going to be Pentiment and Hi-Fi Rush, and they're still working on hardware. Like they've dropped in a mention of the next generation Xbox is going to have the biggest technical leap of any generation. Come back to that later, perhaps. And that is it. And they basically kind of
Diablo coming to Game Pass.
Yeah. Activision Blizzard games are coming to Game Pass, starting with Diablo. And it's a big anticlimax. I've seen so many people, so many takes oh, this could have been an email. This is a nothing burger. Like, for me, I was thinking about this over the weekend, and I apologise, this is going to be cheesy as hell, but I had so many friends taking the mick out of a previous Xbox console name. But for me, this is the real Xbox 360. Technically, there has been movement, but they are exactly where they were before. Nothing has changed here.
Well, I mean, to be clear, like this was never built. It's built. This is the community that built this up, right? So, I'm pretty. We hear things in the games industry, and I'd heard this story. I heard that Microsoft's going to release some of its games on PlayStation, which is different. It is a move. It's different, something different than was done before, unless you count Minecraft, right? And the games that you just mentioned, I'm not going to, but those games are what I'd heard. So when it started coming out that it was this and it was that and it was going third party, I'm sitting there going, it's not what I heard. And Phil says that when you see what the games are, they make sense, and they do make sense, right? So, and we were saying this on the Microcast last week, like I'm pretty sure that this isn't what people think it's going to be, and it wasn't what people think it was going to be. And in fact, they didn't name the games; it was even less than I think people thought it was going to be. But here's the thing with it. I think there's a lot of people out there that don't really know what Xbox's strategy is. And to be clear, this is mostly the same strategy they had when they put Sea of Thieves on Game Pass day and date back in 2018. Right? And the moment they did that was a moment for them where they were making a statement about how they believe the industry is going to move forward. There was some facts in there. The 34 million, is it 34 million Game Pass?
34 million Game Pass. Yeah,
that's a little disappointing, actually.
Have we got clarification yet on whether that just includes all the Xbox Live Gold? It does, right?
It includes core, it includes everything. Right? So it's not much growth. Not really. You could argue not any. But you've got you see they've got challenges there. And you see that moving the games on. To be fair, the games they're talking about moving on to PlayStation, they're actually their best games, right? I know, not their biggest games, but they're genuinely bangers. Like every single one of them is I mean, I've not played Grounded. I played the other three, and they are fantastic video games. There is adverts for the Xbox experience. They're wonderful. If you're going to sit there and try and convince some PlayStation fans to subscribe to Game Pass on PC or whatever, like those are wonderful games to sort of put out there and sort of showcase, hey, look what we can do. Yeah, but it wasn't too much. Here's the thing, though, is what we saw was a further reiteration that they are moving away from the console. Right? They've said this all along, to be clear. It's not a new thing, but this was the biggest statement, the furthest they've moved from it yet, to the fact they're putting more games onto other consoles, is them going, look, the Xbox is just one delivery device. It really, really is. Beforehand, you didn't quite buy it, and now it's sort of, you're starting to feel it. And I wouldn't be surprised if down the line more games do come, including some of the bigger ones, to PS5. You might as well wait and see how these ones do first, but and what impact it has on their other business. But it's a statement that is that's them going, look, we can't rely on the. I did a tweet which admittedly misses out a little bit of is a little bit misleading, where I talked about the PS2 and the Xbox One combined at about 180 million install base. The PS3 and the 360 combined was just over 170 million. And the PS4 and Xbox One combined, again, is about 180 million. You're looking at an industry, those two consoles in particular, which target a very similar market, haven't grown substantially in 20 years.
Yeah.
So, and okay, it's fine. We've got subscriptions and microtransactions and ways to monetize those people. It doesn't matter. Same audience, make more money out of it. But eventually you get to a point where costs are going up so much as they have done now, where you're going to have to try and find new customers. And I think both Sony's financials, which I'm assuming we're going to come on to, and the Xbox news further highlights that the console market is in trouble. Might be a stretch, but it's certainly not an exciting growth market for the games industry at this point in time. And that is and that's a bit sad for people who like the box under the TV. I don't mean to be mean, I love Xbox, but I really wish, I've been hearing this rhetoric about moving away from the box and the future of games and the future of buying games and reaching new markets and putting games into other places and stuff for the best part of a decade now. And I'm like, I just need them to start delivering on this. I just need to start seeing some results rather than this is the strategy. Yeah, I've got the strategy. And I know that a lot of people haven't, but I got the strategy and now I want to see that strategy play out. I need to see some really good games come out on a very frequent basis. I need to get Game Pass subscribers go up. I need to see Xbox players appear in markets where Xbox players didn't exist before, because that's what Microsoft has been promising for a long time.
Yeah, agreed. It's, as you say, like it is just a repetition of the strategy that they've already had. Like I listened to the podcast itself over the weekend again, and like just there were certain phrases and stuff. It's like, I have heard you say this so many times. That, as you say, like,
to be fair, we are in the part of the industry that is going to hear this.
True, yeah.
I'm sure fans, and I think a lot of fans tuned in. They may have heard it, but may not have quite sunk in before, and maybe it did this time.
Yeah, but the point is, like, the whole thing felt like a kind of a reiteration rather than a revelation, as it were.
Yeah,
and yeah, it's interesting. Let's come on to the Sony financials then, because as you hinted, like, kind of those had some very interesting kind of things. I think the big takeaway that a lot of people took was the fact that during the earnings call, Sony president Hiroki Totoki said that there are going to be no major launches from existing franchises until next fiscal year. So that's April 2025 onwards. So that basically means, like, no God of War, no Spider-Man, no Horizon, no Uncharted, nothing, no Last of Us, like nothing that Sony has already made as a big hit is due to arrive in the next 12 to 15 months. And that is slightly concerning, personally. But then, well, it would be It would be even more concerning if it was Microsoft, given that they're, given the position they have in the console market. But I guess PlayStation, I think, as you've said before, like every game is a PlayStation game. It
depends on what you're talking about. Like, if you're talking about them from a perspective of a publisher where they want to make money, yes, not having a very big hit this year is not going to be great for their bottom line. Let's just note they've just launched Helldivers, which is like the biggest game of the week in the minute.
Yes,
so it's like, and you wouldn't describe that as a big IP. I'm still holding out hope for Astrobot. But which again, but you never know. Where the next, just because they're not launching something in an established franchise doesn't mean they have a hit. Won't have a hit game this year. We'll have to wait and see on that front. But it's not great. But from a PlayStation sales, PS5 sales perspective, it does. PlayStation 5 is the market leader, which means that when a big game comes out, it drives sales of PlayStation, whether or not it's a Sony game or not, right? So it's a big new Star Wars Outlaws will drive sales of PS5, for instance. GTA 6 will drive sales of PS5. The question is, when are those games coming? Right? Because actually, even when you look at the release schedule, particularly for the calendar year, it doesn't look very great right now. I know we've got a lot of stuff to hear about, I'm sure, but right now I'm not looking at anything going. I'm looking at the market going, this is going to be a real tough comparison to 2023.
Yeah.
And that's going to impact Sony. It's going to impact Xbox. My biggest concern about the Xbox financials, Sony financials, sorry, and actually I think it's more significant. The starter says the fact they missed their target by 4 million. And I think we all thought that 25 million was an ambitious target. 25 million shipments of PS5s was an ambitious target. And they even admitted that after their first quarter, this is going to be tough. They missed it by. They're hopefully only going to miss it by 4 million because this is their projection for the end of the financial year. 21 million is a huge number, but obviously that's obviously not great. My biggest worry is the margin. So the amount of money that they made versus the amount of money they spent was not very. The gap is the smallest margin they've made since they've been doing this, and I would argue that I think it points to the biggest challenge the games industry faces. By the way, Sean Layden, which has been saying this for quite some time now, the spiralling costs of video game development, eventually there's going to become an issue. And you heard Sony talk about in their calls afterwards, PC is going to have to be a big bet for us. We're going to have to put more of our games onto the PC platform to grow our audience, to bring in some revenue. And he also talked about how costs need to get under control. This is something that all the games industry is going under. That's what the layoffs are linked to, right? But it's not just about laying staff off and bringing down your workforce. It's about marketing costs, but all costs. You need to look at it and go, actually, are we spending too much? Are we taking too long to make these games? Do we need to get tighter on delivering them? And how do we do that? And those are real big questions the industry is wrestling with right now. And you really heard that at the Sony financials. My biggest worry for PlayStation is the fact that they launched a massive game in Spider-Man 2. It did 10 million copies, clearly a profitable game, but wasn't as profitable as you think 10 million copies would be. And that is over $300 million apparently that game cost to make. It's obscene, really.
Yeah. And going back to something you said there, like about how every kind of, as platform leader, it should benefit from every major game. Like, to not reach that target 25 million, which, as you say, was ambitious, but to be 4 million short in a year that had stellar releases. Like, we're not going to see a year like 2023 for a good few years now. Hogwarts, Diablo, Zelda obviously is not Nintendo, but like Spider-Man.
Interestingly, you're stumbling there, which is quite interesting because actually Hogwarts, yes. Spider-Man, yes, but actually all the other games are on other platforms.
Yeah, okay.
Diablo's a PC game.
No, that's true.
Baldur's Gate, which I guess that was a thing, but also a bit more PC focused, that one as well. Zelda was a Switch game.
Fair.
Starfield was an Xbox game. No, but it's interesting. The same thought process came to me. I thought, we're not going to get a year like that, and I thought actually wasn't the most played. And the Call of Duty last year wasn't great.
No, that's true. Yeah.
Okay,
so Spider-Man was
it was definitely a peak year. I think it was definitely a peak year for PS5, and the peak wasn't as high as they wanted it to be.
No, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see what they do have for the next fiscal year, because they don't have anything, any major existing franchises coming out in the next year, doesn't mean they haven't got. As you say, we may get a new Astrobot, which would make us all happy. But they said specifically they're focusing
the best game of this generation. I'm not even joking.
No,
the PS5. If you've not played it, it's an absolute diamond of a game.
I believe you. I do need to go back and play it. I was listening to someone, another podcast at our company, Best Games Ever, was pitching the merits of Astro's Playroom, and it's like, I do need to go back and play that. Business podcast. Like the fact that they're not releasing major existing franchises, they will have some sort of release this year, and they mentioned in the earnings call they're starting to focus on kind of new IP, but also kind of this live service game. We know they've got at least 6 live service games in the works. There's the Jade Raymond one. I think it's Fair Games with a $sign for it instead of an S. Like, that perhaps might be arrived this year. Like, I'm intrigued to see what they do release this year because launching live service games, particularly live service games that are based on new IP, giving them the breathing room of not going up against the next God of War, the next Horizon, etc. I'm intrigued to see how well those do as and when
and
they are announced.
I will say this actually: a year where there isn't. Look, nobody released their game around Hogwarts, right? Because don't do that, right? And nobody released their game around Zelda. Nobody released a couple around Diablo, but even them, there were more established games like Final Fantasy and Street Fighter. People did release their games around Baldur's Gate 3. They didn't realise that game was going to do what it did. And it we saw the story about Immortals of Avium and how much that struggled. That launched in the Baldur's Gate kill zone, right? And so these game developers, they know to avoid certain titles. In a year where you had as many blockbusters as we had last year, that made it really difficult for AA studios to show off look at the cool thing we've made. This year, we've already had two breakouts, right? We actually had more than two, but two particular big ones: Power World and now Helldivers. So you've got these. Is it Helldivers or Helldrivers?
Helldivers too.
Yeah. Those two games have come out. Those are AA games, right? Those are not. You might even describe Power World as being below that, and they're not like mega. They're indie titles, effectively, fancy indie games. And because they're not going up against, they've got the room to show off and break out. And I think you're going to see quite a few of that this year, which is great, by the way. And it's great for the industry overall, at least below that AAA level. So there is going to be advantages. And as you say, if Sony are launching a new IP, let's say Fair Games or one of their service games, or the one that Fire Sprite's working on as well, the Crucible, something like that, that game... it's a great opportunity for these titles because Sony's gone, hey, we don't have many big games coming out this year. Let's put our marketing budgets, our efforts around and our PR team on these projects instead, and we can drive them. And it's probably a great opportunity for those titles to come through, really. But it's definitely good. This year is going to not look great. If you look at if you're looking purely at the fun numbers, console sales, I think, across all three platforms are going to be down substantially, and or at least substantially in some for some of them. And software sales, I think, are going to look weak as well, unless there's something that we don't know about.
Well, particularly in light of recent reports that Switch 2, or the Switch successor, or whatever the heck Nintendo names it, may not be arriving until March 2025 at the earliest. So this has been doing the rounds in the last few... Pardon? Switch U. New Switch U. New Nintendo Switch U XL. Now that reports are going around that the new Nintendo Switch U XL is not going to be arriving until 2025. It was originally targeted as a holiday 2024 release, or at least kind of in time for the holidays. It was never confirmed. This is all very much going on kind of rumor and inside reporting and analyst expectation. It was never... So I've seen a lot of kind of debate as to whether or not this counts as a delay, because can something that never had a launch window be delayed? But regardless of the semantics, we may now not be getting a new Nintendo console this year. It may be arriving next year. Now, going into Christmas, or rather going into December last year, the hopes were that 2024's market would be very much driven, certainly in the console space and just the overall gaming market, would be driven by the arrival of Grand Theft Auto 6 and new Nintendo Switch U XL. Now, GTA 6 was not delayed. So again, I'm doing that conscious thing of because you expect it to not. GTA 6 was confirmed for 2025 in December, but there was still the hope that Switch 2 should be arriving in time for Christmas. That will still be a boost to the market. If these rumours are true, and they may well be, it's as much as it would be ideal to get Nintendo's new console out in time for Christmas, if Nintendo are having problems, securing components or manufacturing or whatever, let's destroy our microphone, shall we? There we go. Professional as ever. If Nintendo are struggling to, get any part of the Switch 2 manufacturing process going, then it's feasible that it will be pushed to 2025, launching kind of Marchish, still get it in before the end of the financial year, so that give them a bit of a boost. They proved with Switch that they can pull off a good March release, but that really does call into question what's going to drive growth in the games market in 2024. Mobile is still the largest part of the market, but there's not much growth there in terms of there's not much disruption going on there. PC is less than the console.
Slowed down as a bit. Well, mobile growth
massively.
slowed.
Yeah, it's really, really slowed. PC is smaller than console, so even if there was a massive shift in the PC space, it kind of is on console too. Certainly console is a key factor in driving the overall industry growth. What's going to drive it without Switch 2?
Well, you don't the problem is a cyclical industry, right? This is not unusual. We do have years where things are going down. It's that we don't expect it. We've had this thing in the middle of the cycle where Nintendo comes along midway through a console cycle, where just as PlayStation, Xbox are starting to look down from their peak, Nintendo come along and go, we've got something here, we'll keep you going. And the fact that it sort of doesn't quite line up this year, I'm not sure it is a component thing. I suspect any delays, or if you call it a delay. Here's the thing, I was told 2-3 weeks ago, it's out September, October time, probably. And they're going to announce it in March. And then 2 weeks later, I'm told by someone, no, it's coming out in 2025. We've known since December. I know, and it's like I'm sure there's a lot of trickling down, and a lot of hearsay being discussed. So whether or not Nintendo ever planned to launch it this year, I think they did, but from what I understand, but that whether they did or didn't, it doesn't matter. But I suspect it's a software thing. Like Nintendo have got to launch their new console with a game, and they've got to launch it with a game, and then they've got to follow it up with another one. And then another one. They know how this works. They didn't do it with the Wii U. And there's this interesting, somebody did a tweet, said, what if the Wii U had been delayed 4 months? What would that first year have looked like for the Wii U? And the software slate would have been so much stronger because it would have been crammed into that period of time. And it would have maybe generated more momentum than it had. And I've got a if Nintendo don't have, if the game they were planning to launch the Switch with isn't going to be ready till March, launch the Switch in March. Don't put it out, Switch 2. Don't put it out alongside, just because get it out before Christmas to hit that holiday window. It is important that they get that right, and they do. Oddly, they have a bit of time. My worry is that we are seeing in the West a real decline in Switch sales. It's doing quite well in Japan. I know that they're estimating an increase in. They want to do 15 million console shipments in this financial year. They've revised that up by 500,000. It's not a huge revision, but it shows that the momentum's there. It's doing better than they thought. You look at their release slate for the year. The biggest game is probably a HD remaster Luigi's Mansion 2.
Yeah,
and it's.
I don't know. Princess Peach's Showtime looks really good. I know it's not going to be as big. I know it's not going to be big, but I'm just I don't want to get it to get overlooked. But yeah, I know what you mean.
It is the only original game on the schedule.
Yes,
everything else is a Paper Mario Thousand Year Door, and we just had Mario versus Donkey Kong, which are all remasters or remakes. We should, based on historical precedent, have a Pokemon game this year. So normally you get a Pokemon. They take a year off. Normally that was last year. So you would expect it might be a remake or something that's good. Obviously,
the rumor or the report I saw was it's going to be a Johto version of Let's Go. You remember the Let's Go Pikachu?
But I've heard that every year for about 10 years now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
and I saw the rumor that based on the fact that there's no. People can't transfer Pokemon anymore, and I'm like, they're not going to release an entire game just so you can transfer the Pokemon. Just put the old one on Nintendo Switch Online. But maybe. But I would have expected a black and white remaster, or maybe a new Legends game. But regardless, there might be a new Pokemon game this year, which will give them a big title for Q4. But it's a little troubling in terms of their slate for the year. But they've still got some remasters, remakes to lean on. They've still got a bit of momentum behind them. As long as they don't lose that momentum, I think it's so important they still have an engaged audience going into the next console. They will be really mindful of that. But they do have tools at their disposal. Beforehand, they had to release a game to generate interest. Now they've got DLC they can use stuff like that. They can put things into their online service. They can do loads of things and try and keep their audience playing their console that perhaps wasn't available in a non-digital age, where they can try and keep that audience looking forward to whatever comes next. It is, I think, disappointing for the market. I think 2024 has never looked tougher, and it already looked tough. With GTA 6 and Switch 2 in 2025, that should be a big console year. Just as long as they don't launch next to each other, that would be
unless GTA 6 is a launch title for Switch 2, and that's why they've delayed it.
Yes. That's why they're going to launch it with GTA 6.
You heard it here first. You heard it here first.
We're going to launch with Mario Kart and Grand Theft Auto.
Yes. there's crossplay between them. You can take your Grand Theft Auto cars into Mario Kart for the online multiplayer. We're going to stop there because that's incredibly silly. Thank you so much for joining us for the Microcast. We are going to be back next Monday. Chris, thank you so much for joining me as always.
Thank you for hosting, James. It's always fun.
Fun's an interesting word for how I host, but yes, I appreciate the sentiment. You can, as always, get more news, insight, and analysis into the business behind video games at GamesIndustry.biz, and you can find all the microcasts and previous episodes of the podcast on the podcasting platform of your choice or the GamesIndustry.biz YouTube channel. We'll be back next Monday. Thank you so much for joining us.